Okay, we're back. Dr. Tom Elassie has come over here to spend an hour with us at the end of his long day at Vanderbilt, so we do appreciate you coming in on a Monday night. We got some great calls as we talk about diabetes, and it's a big, we're learning a very big topic here, so much to talk about. Let's get to Stanley on line 2. Stanley, thank you for holding.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I have diabetes, and I've also got some kidney issues. My internist had recommended Januvia, but I saw that in my research there was some question as to its effect on the kidneys. Do you have any kind of clinical opinion on that?
Yeah, so thank you for that question. Januvia is a relatively safe medication. The generic is sitagliptin, and it's a relatively new medication within the last decade or so. Unless your kidney function is markedly affected, so maybe if we have a chance to follow up, I'd be interested in terms of what your creatinine is, if you know what that number is, if you've ever gotten that from your doctor. Do you know that?
2.5.
Yeah, so that's getting a little bit higher. So I think there are some ways to adjust the dose of that. So Januvia comes in 100 milligram and 50 milligram tablets. And I'm going to guess that based on that, he has you on 50 milligrams?
Or what is he recommending?
50. Yeah. So, you know, I think there are other options certainly for folks, but certainly it's approved at that range. And whether it's as effective as the kidney function progresses is a different story. I think if your sugar control is fine, I think 50 is an acceptable dose at that. Sounds like you have a good doctor.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, let's go to Velma next. Hey, Velma, welcome.
Hello?
Hey, go ahead and just mute your television set there and talk over the phone. Thelma, go ahead.
Okay.
That's all right.
Hi, Roy.
Hey.
Hello, Dr. Elassie.
Yep.
Good evening.
I have a question about pancreatic insufficiency, type 2 diabetes, and what your success rate is treating this pancreatic insufficiency that caused type 2 with stem cell or they call islet cells, or are you even doing that here?
Ooh, wow.
Yeah, so to some extent, that's a form of transplantation. It's just a slightly different approach, with the notion being with stem cells, the hope is that if we give you something that has the potential to develop into a beta cell, that it will find a home and be able to recreate the milieu within the pancreas of the beta cell, and in fact be a beta cell, and then secrete insulin. I wish I could tell you that the science of that is to a point where we're doing that regularly. We're not. I think the only areas where that is happening are purely investigational. And I think so if you have type 2 diabetes, it would be difficult to sort of qualify for a study for that. Most of that work currently is being done in type 1 diabetes. I think the good news, even without that, if you have type 2 diabetes, I can tell you I am very, very encouraged by the options that we currently have available. I really feel that, first of all, I'll tell you that Nashville is a wonderful, wonderful medical community. There just are some fantastic physicians in this town, at Vanderbilt and outside of Vanderbilt. And with a good doc who is going to be very attentive to you, I think we can keep your sugar under very, very good control. And I think the risk, if you have type 2 diabetes, of undergoing these things probably outweighs the benefit.
Velma, thank you. Mike, you're up. Go ahead.
Hey, I got a question to ask, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
My question is, has there been doing any research to find out how we can beat diabetes like they do cancer? My other question is, how do people get diabetes? I mean, is it just, I know it can be handed down from generation to generation, but I mean,
how does it just develop in some people?
How does it just develop? And I'll hang up, and thanks for all you guys are doing, and have a great night.
Thank you, Mike.
Well, thank you, Mike. Well, I think, believe it or not, the story in type 2 diabetes is quite encouraging. And again, I'm going to say things that are incredibly simple, And I hope they don't disappoint because they're so simple. But I can think of no other medical condition where weight loss has such a profound effect on the natural history of a condition as type 2 diabetes. Let's leave type 1 completely out of the picture because that's a very different condition. But for type 2 diabetes, so to your question, can it improve or even reverse? I can tell you a couple things. Number one, if you lose 10% of your body weight and you're significantly overweight with type 2 diabetes, I can get you off a medication.
That's
if you
amazing.
lose 20%, I can get you off most medication. And what's even more dramatic, and speaking a little bit about interesting things that have happened over the last decade, the impact of bariatric surgery on individuals with type 2 diabetes who are significantly obese is really quite dramatic. I don't personally do bariatric surgery, but certainly
work in concert
with my colleagues who, and if you qualify, it can actually be quite dramatic. For type 2, and I really just want to make a distinction, type 2 versus type 1. So I think those are important.
Thank you, Mike. Great question. Go to Gail now. Hi, Gail.
Hi, I had a question for the doctor about testing for diabetes.
Okay, good. Go ahead.
I've heard that the best way to test is a glucose tolerance test.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked my doctor about that, and she said she doesn't even think that they do that anymore, and I was told that was the sure way to find out. She's just pricked my finger, took blood, and that's all I've ever had done. But my grandmother died of diabetes. She had 3 strokes, and the last one killed her. She had to have her feet, her legs in a tent and all. It was way back, years ago. Right. And my sister has it, and it runs in my family, and I'm just concerned about it. I've gained a lot of weight, and I'm trying to lose it, but it just seems like it's getting harder to do. And
Gail, hold on.
I'm concerned about having diabetes, and I'm really not for sure that I don't.
All right, let's hold right there. We only have about 1 minute before our final break. Go ahead, Doc.
So real quick, Gail, you're right and your doctor's right. You're right in that we do oral glucose tolerance tests, these where we give you some sugar and then we test your sugar after you ingest it. We mostly do it today in the setting of pregnant women. We don't usually do it in routine primary care. So you're right in that we continue to do oral glucose tolerance tests, but your doctor's also right in that it is sufficient to make a diagnosis with diabetes using regular blood tests. Ideally, you would get a fasting blood test, but you can also get a blood test that's random, or you can get a test called a hemoglobin A1C. And was it Mary? Did I say that right?
Gail.
Gail. And Gail, if your hemoglobin A1C is greater than 6.5 or equal to 6.5, that's a good test. So I think your doctor's right, but you're also right. We still do glucose tests, but mostly for pregnant women.
Fantastic. Great calls tonight. We've got 1 caller left. We have to go to our final break. We're actually going to take this call. I think it's Barbara during the commercial break to make sure she gets her question in.
Great.
We'll wrap things up with Dr. ELSIE right after this.